I think tonight we've seen an amazing number of qualified Conservatives who will do an amazing job as your representatives on the provincial board. Let's give everybody an amazing round of applause. Now you might have noticed I've used the word amazing 5 times in 3 sentences. There's a reason for that. Because the next segment of our program tonight has to do with something that is simply amazing. And that is the willingness of our government to tune up the Alberta Bill of Rights, first established in 1972 by the late Peter Lougheed and the Progressive Conservatives of the day. So I promised you that I would tell you my little story. So there's 21 new rights that I think you will find tonight right on the money. You're going to understand them all, okay? Fascinating how many of them have been ignored, say, as there was references tonight, for the last 4 years, 5 years. Who knows how long the Liberals have been there anymore. But I had this socialist person who claimed to be an NDP say to me, "We don't need any more rights. I'm happy with the 13 I have." I said, "Opportunity." I said, "No problem." I took a page out of the Premier's book. I says, "I'll tell you what, let's give you a choice. You can keep the 13 you have and waive the extra 21. That'll be one of the new Alberta Bill of Rights inclusions, is that you can waive your rights if you want to, and you can never give them back. So if you're out there and you're the NDP and you're watching this, realize that if you're okay with the 13 you have, fantastic. But if you would like to see more rights and more freedoms, then you should be in favor of what the next 2 gentlemen are going to bring to you. There's 2 gentlemen who thought, we're going to get behind an idea, and that is writing the new Alberta Bill of Rights. The first speaker, Mr. Scott Payne, was one of those gentlemen who was right in there with all of the phrases and ideas, getting it down on paper. The second gentleman, Mr. Mitch Sylvester, as you will learn, is a hard-driving businessman who wants to see things get over the finish line. So, oh, there he is. Sorry, you have to put that product down. We're not doing any commercials for those guys. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Scott Payne. Yeah. You'll be okay. Okay. I'm going to follow you.
Is this on? Can everybody hear you? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to talk about what we submitted to the government as recommended amendments to the Bill of Rights, but I'd like to start off with a few things. I'd like to talk about leadership, very important, and how it's related to constituency associations. So Calgary Lougheed, you guys are notorious, famous, you're doing lots of things. And, oh, can we? Okay, there's a short in here somewhere. Anyway, all the things that you're doing, amazing leadership in conservatism. It doesn't happen without the leadership of Darrell and without having a great MLA like Eric Bouchard. So great job on that. I do want to motivate you guys to be even better, but I don't think that there's a more fitting name for a constituency association than Calgary Lougheed. So a great former leader and a great CA. However, I think you guys can do better because Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul has an army, and they also have a great leader in Mitch Sylvester, and he'll be coming up to speak. And they also have a very strong MLA in Scott Sayre. And then the final riding I'd like to talk about is my riding, is Brooks Medicine Hat. They have a MLA you may not have heard of. She's kind of quiet, demure lady, Premier Daniel Smith. And really, I think a lot of the excitement that we had last year and a lot that we have this year is due in no small part to her. When she said sovereignty, people's ears perked up. When she started taking back areas of authority from the federal government, people started to pay attention. And when she talked about increasing our affirmed God-given rights in our supreme legislation, so the Alberta Bill of Rights being part of our Alberta unwritten constitution, I think everybody paid attention last week and saw that video. So all credit to her, all glory to God. She's been working on things for a long time in the background. I had on my phone here, because I can't remember the full name of it, but in I think November 2022, when she got the leadership and won the by-election, she hired another great Albertan, Preston Manning, to lead a panel that's called the Public Health Emergencies Governance Review Panel, or FERGIP for short. I think they're starting to call it the Manning Panel now. So anyway, if you get a chance to read it, I think you're looking at about 400 pages, including the appendices. But go on alberta.ca, read I think yes, chapters 10 and 11 of the report, which is the recommendations, and read appendices 6 to 9. And in there, you will find 13 recommendations to amend the Alberta Bill of Rights. So she didn't commission a panel without some goal in mind. So she's been thinking Bill of Rights for a long time, and she's kind of come out with it now. So good on her. Please be at the AGM. Wear a black hat to support her. I do come from a long line of hat makers, by the way. So, but please be there to support her, because if she's not there after the AGM, I don't think the Bill of Rights is either. So it's a great opportunity to get on with it and thank her. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So everybody needs a kind of a visual of what success looks like. So we put forward recommendations. This isn't the Alberta Bill of Rights. It won't be the Alberta Bill of Rights. The government will draft its own Bill of Rights and probably has a lot of it done, if not the whole thing done by now. But this is what it can look like. We should have a parchment that gets signed. I think a lot of you probably have seen the Charter of Rights and Freedoms parchment. It's got the House of Commons in the background. So we should have something that we can see visually and that we hang up, and there should be a copy, just like the Canadian Bill of Rights, as you'll see in your members of Parliament offices. This should be in every MLA's office, every judge's office, every police station, every school room, because we need to learn our rights just as our American cousins to the south know them, so that we can defend them. So when another pandemic comes through and we have police officers pulling hockey players off the ice, or we have other police officers that are, arresting stormtroopers in Lethbridge, if we have somebody telling us we can't do something or we must get an injection to go to the movie theater or elsewhere, we can stand on our rights, and we can hold chiefs of police accountable. So just very briefly, what we did is we took the original Bill of Rights that still remains. It's been updated in 2000, just adding parental education rights. We added the 13 recommendations from the Manning panel, which you see in red. We added 22 rights and freedoms, which you'll see in blue. And we took out, most importantly, so if you are going to email your MLA, if you are going to email other MLAs, ministers, and the Premier, I recommend you say, by the way, whatever you do, take out all notwithstanding legislation or wording. Because if you read the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, specifically Section 1 and Section 33, you'll see that that bill, or Charter of Rights and Freedoms, has handicapped itself. It's kneecapped it. It's really allows courts and parliaments and legislatures to override your rights.
Hear, hear.
Anyway, next slide, please. I only have about 20 minutes to speak, so I've got to go through quickly. But I will be down here for questions after if anyone wants to talk to me. And if you want to send an email to blackhatsab@gmail.com at the bottom there, we'll be happy to answer you in time. Okay, so we'll just get through the preambles, but those are very important parts of it. One important part that was added by Leighton Gray, I'm not sure if you people know him. He's got a great podcast, but he's one of the top 50 lawyers in Canada, just voted in about a month ago. And he is one of the lawyers that beat the government in court about the COVID mandates. So he is also an Alberta treasurer and a great leader. So he brought a lot of credibility to what we did and helped improve it. Okay, so freedom of religion, belief, and conscience. I think everybody's kind of got those concepts. I won't get into the details of that. Right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. So that encompasses a lot of different things. This bill covers many policies that are in the party governance policy policy declaration manual. So that goes back to Ray Strom and his team, that they've helped bring policy forward for voting at the, how many AGMs has it been now, Ray? A dozen? 3? Okay. So this is where the grassroots can come in and affect policy. So we made it part of our policy that we got in last year, and Ray's team helped to bring it through, and thanks for that, Ray. That we wanted to expand rights from the charter, we wanted to add certain rights, and we wanted to add any rights that appear in the party governance manual because they were voted on by the members, rights and freedoms. So that includes certain things like right to work, certain things like, keep men out of women's spaces. Yeah. So, and many other things that we can imagine. So, and pursuit of happiness, that's pretty broad, but there's certain things in there that we really need to have for sure. Freedom of speech, expression, and from public or private censorship in any form. So, the Bill of Rights is not to protect us from the federal government or the provincial government or municipal governments like yours in Calgary. It's to protect us from all of those governments. Rights and freedoms are granted to us, obviously by God. Everybody will have different opinions on that. But within the Constitution of Canada, the 1867 Act, which is still a main part of the Constitution, there's the distribution of legislative powers. Part 6, Section 92, starts the provincial powers. And it says, and I'll just paraphrase, that provinces have the exclusive, bold, double underline, italics, in red, exclusive legislative authority, and then in relation to these matters, subsection 13, property and civil rights in the province. Wow. Boom, a lot of heads exploding, right? And mine did a couple of years ago before we started this. So that's pretty much everything. Some people say, well, what about human rights? If you go through the Constitution, you will never see human in there. That's more of a later 60s thing, I think, when that came out. But human rights are just really a part of civil rights. So this gives us broad powers provincially to enshrine our rights in supreme legislation. So now, up until the legislature sits, and I think it'll be Tuesday or Wednesday, is my guess, is when the province will actually put the bill forward to amend the Alberta Bill of Rights. You have an opportunity to email, I suggest, all the MLAs, ministers, and the Premier, and tell them what you want, and be specific. So take that opportunity. Freedom of parents to make decisions concerning the health, education, welfare, and upbringing of their children. So, in short, parents' rights. We have another Alberta treasurer, Shauna Sundell from the Irreplaceable Parent Project, .ca, I believe it is. She drafted this. So we see whether it's certain trades, some teachers believe that they are co-parenting and actually have more trust and authority over your children, our children, than we should. It's funny that, we see in the newspapers, some parents get charged with abuse or whatever, but we always see teachers getting charged with things as well. Why? Because they come from the same population as parents. They're no different than us. They're no more special. So this one is close, near and dear to my heart, because I've got a couple of kids. They're out of the house now, so they don't listen to me anymore. It doesn't really matter. But I think they're going to have kids someday, and I want them to have that authority over their children so that they don't get big surprises after a couple of years that some of the people in this audience may have seen. So please speak up about that. Freedom to keep and bear arms, including ownership and use of firearms. So, So I was talking about the preamble. I go off on tangents, and it usually takes me a couple hours to get back to the point. So here I am. Leighton Gray added to the preamble a mention of the English Bill of Rights from 1688 that granted citizens the right to bear arms. So that actually preceded the Americans. So we have it in our common law, and as an element of property, a subset of property, it's really and truly the government of Alberta's exclusive legislative authority for property rights, and of course, firearms being a subset. So very pleased to hear the Premier announce that in her video last week. So if you haven't seen it, go on alberta.ca or YouTube Daniel Smith Premier Bill of Rights, you'll find it. So freedom to keep and own private property, including land, livestock, and chattels. And she did mention she did mention property rights in her video as well. So you know, even send those messages of encouragement and thanks, be there at the AGM, and then let them know what you want to see in property rights. Because there's a lot of details to property rights, zoning and all those types of things. And there's all kinds of stories where governments may not have taken your land, but they've screwed it up through rezoning or roads, whatever, other developments, those types of things. So now's the time to speak up so we can include some of those details. Next slide, please. Freedom from supervision, surveillance, and unreasonable search and seizure. So the National Police Force, I won't mention their name, you might know who they are. There's just an article about they're going to increase the use of drones in forested areas. So there are a few trees in Calgary. So you know, we already have helicopters going over the cities, and a lot of that can be good. But you know, we've all watched the things, good ideas go bad. So it's one of those things we want to make sure that they don't have listening devices or video of our homes or what we're doing, and even, you know, intruding into our financial matters. So there's all kinds of things that we want to protect ourselves from. Yes. Okay, freedom of mobility. So this is essentially an expansion of what's already in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but everything that we might like that's in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, we should be looking to have in our own Alberta Bill of Rights, because the Charter itself, again, it's handicapped itself. Section 33 allows any legislature or parliament, as long as they give notice, to legislate away your rights from Section 2 and Section 7 to 15. So it kind of really only leaves language rights for you. So those things can happen. All right, freedom to remain silent under questioning, detention, arrest, or trial. So, you know, we've seen some famous trials. We saw how the police were used during the pandemic. So we need to affirm these types of things here, including we should always have the right to have a lawyer present during questioning, not to just speak to them before questioning, because they're very famous for charging people and then just say, hey, if you disagree with it, just take it through the courts and deal with it. But anybody can take a look at that and say, hey, I get arrested, I get embarrassed. I think there was a lady down east who just shot a water gun, and she's been charged with assault now, right? So I'm not saying those egregious things are happening here, but they can. But we don't want people to be charged, thrown into essentially the confession box. They're left by their own devices, and then they start answering questions like, were you here at this time? They may have been at that place, they may not have been, they may get confused, and then all of a sudden that becomes evidence against them. So we should have the right to have a lawyer present. Okay, legal counsel before such right. Freedom to demand natural justice and procedural fairness in all criminal and civil matters. So we saw how long the people in Coots incident were in jail before actually going to trial.
Still are.
Yep, 100%. And that should have happened within 18 months according to the Supreme Court from a few years ago. So we need these guarantees within our Alberta Bill of Rights and others. So if you got good ideas, send them in. Freedom from arbitrary detention. So I think probably some of that would have been seen at Coots. And at the convoy, truckers convoy in Edmonton, Ottawa. And there will probably be future conservative type protests But, left wing as well. Whoever protests should not be just thrown in the clink or pushed out of an area or assaulted by police or otherwise, right? They have a right to protest until they start breaking other laws, right? So assembly, freedom of speech, expression, all those things need to be protected. Okay, freedom to democratically elect and recall legislators by voting through secret paper ballots to be manually hand counted. So this is another example of what was in the policy declaration manual from last year. Banff Kananaskis forwarded that policy about the tabulators. So I think everybody has some piece of foolproof technology at home. Please raise your hand if you have one. No, nobody does. Liar, sorry. I think we all know that engineers are very crafty people, whether they're computer engineers or building bridges or blowing them up, creating weapons, counter weapons. People think of different ways to do things. So even if the tabulators were working properly, not abused, not broken into, they brought doubt into an election. Yeah. And that is the most evil part of it, I think. So I think we've now have the government saying, yeah, we're going to get rid of that. That's great. But let's make it our right that we don't have these types of things that can take away our vote. Freedom to use sufficient force necessary to defend person, family, home, and property from any and all occupation, theft, or destruction. So, Premier Smith, God bless her, in Bonnyville again, a great riding, Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul. She said in January, I believe we have the right to bear guns, or to bear arms, sorry. And she also said, and I believe we have the right to self-defense. So the bad guys and gals do not attack us when we're in a boxing ring and we got our dukes up and we're ready to go. You're at home, partially clothed or naked if anybody does that. Hands up if you're naked, just kidding. You're not awake, you're not aware. Or you're walking in the park, you got your headphones on, it's dark, you can't see them. And they always carry weapons generally. In fact, the person themselves becomes a weapon, whether they're going to choke somebody or hit them, whatever it is. So we don't have an opportunity to prepare ourselves. So if we have something like a firearm, we should be able to have it ready to go to defend ourselves. Yeah. There are enough laws for negligence that nobody is going to leave a loaded firearm around when you've got young children. And if the excuse is, well, you might use it in spousal abuse, well, spousal abusers are going to do what they're going to do. And they're not going to obey laws and regulations to have a firearm triple locked or whatever the deal is. So this is what we believe in. If you believe in it too, send your emails. Show up at the MLA's office. Where's your office? Sorry. Daryl will tell you after. Okay. Freedom from discrimination, including upon the basis of diversity, inclusion, or equity. So this, again, another policy that came out last year. So some people in the old days might call it reverse discrimination. It's really divide and conquer, make us all a bunch of different tribes of, people, everybody's got a different gripe against everybody. And again, this is where our children are going to suffer in education or job opportunities. So we need to make it fair for everybody. Freedom to access financial services to goods and services and to conduct commerce via bills of exchange. And that would also include, precious metals or whatever we need to do. So people are concerned about the central bank digital currency. Good thing to be concerned about, because if they tell you they can turn it off, well, that's probably an idea of what they're going to do. And whether they bring us to poverty through inflation or otherwise, we need to legally be able to use other currencies or precious metals or whatever to trade with, and not actually be considered part of the black market. Is Daryl giving me the hook here?
Scott, go back.
Okay.
15.
Here.
Did I miss something? Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah.
freedom of informed consent and to make personal health decisions, including to refuse vaccinations, medical or surgical procedures without any adverse consequence by any authority or employer.
Hear, hear.
So,
It's a good idea.
so we can't really take too much credit for that because that's really what the Premier's been calling for.
Hear, hear.
And I think you'll read in the Manning panel report, or the FERG as we like to call it, that that's some of the stuff that they want to protect us from. If you do get a chance to read the Manning panel report and a week later you come to some conclusions on it, they're also going to change a bunch of legislation as well. So it's not just the Bill of Rights. So I think we're going to see some great things in this legislative session. So, and this obviously hits home anybody who was forced to take an injection or to not. I actually, there's a great football team in Calgary, I can't mention their name, but I was a long-time season ticket holder, but a member of my family couldn't get vaccinated, and I had to cancel my season tickets. And I gave them opportunities to talk to me, and actually 2 years later somebody did phone me, vice president, great guy, heard me out, but they wouldn't promise to not do it again.
Time is becoming an issue, so let's see where we can go here.
Okay, all right, yeah, next page. So we're basically just about done here, but one thing that came up was freedom to demand independent public inquiries into the conduct of government. So we see governments talk about these things, and then they'll have committees to talk about a committee, to maybe talk about an inquiry, which will cost about $20 million when we recognize, yeah, and they take years, and usually the summaries or the reports that come out of it really don't want to point fingers at anybody. Nobody gets fired. They might change some policies, but I think this is where, and we've seen it, we as a party put forward a policy to essentially change the Bill of Rights. Now, I think the Premier was going to do that anyway, so credit to her. But this gave her a little bit more momentum to do it, I think. And if she wasn't going to do it, certainly she's doing it now. But imagine if we can actually start a process to inquire what happened, who did what, and be part of the report that makes the recommendations. More power to the people. And you'll find more than enough volunteers that would be happy to help with these things, in my opinion. Freedom to access government services and government information. So kind of a basic guarantee that, maybe if you don't get vaccinated, you can still get your passport. Or you can get unemployment insurance because they've shut your business down. Or you can show up to the hospital, and if you have a condition where you can't wear a mask, you don't get put off to the side and have to fight for your health care. Or there's a million different examples of it, and I think we need that basic guarantee. And then the right of official languages. So English is our language in this province. Unlikely that they're going to attack that. It'll probably be one of the last things that comes out of it, but we felt it was important to have in there. And so Daryl had come up with 3 softball questions for me, so we don't even have to have them. So the answers are 7 blue, and grilled cheese sandwiches.
Thank you very much, Scott Payne. There are thousands of hours of volunteer time put in with
Hear,
Scott
hear.
and his team. Big round of applause for everyone in the Black Hats.